The Karnataka government introduced a new legislation against hate speech and hate crime in the Legislative Assembly on Wednesday. While government claims that the Karnataka Hate Speech and Hate Crimes Prevention Bill 2025 is a first-of-its-kind legislation, which is aimed at curbing and preventing hate speech and crimes. The bill was vociferously opposed by the BJP. All offences under this bill are non-bailable, with provisions of imprisonment ranging from 1 year to 7 years, with a fine of 50,000 rupees. Repeat offenders will attract imprisonment ranging from 2 years to 10 years with a fine of 1 lakh Indian rupees. And if an organization commits a hate crime, person in charge of the said organization will also be guilty of the offence. The bill also allows the court to award adequate compensation to the victims based on the gravity of the crime. The provisions of this bill will not extend to any book, pamphlet, paper, writing, drawing, painting, representation or figure if it is proven to be in the interest of science, literature, art or learning or used for heritage or religious purposes. Now, this bill assumes significance as India's criminal code, the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, does not define hate speech and hate crime. However, BNS does have provisions such as 196 and 299, which penalize enmity between different groups on grounds of religion, race, place of birth, residence, language, and acts intended to outrage religious feelings. Previously, Section 66A of the IT Act was invoked against hate speech, but it was scrapped by the Supreme Court in 2015. Now, that has sparked a war of words between the government and opposition BJP. BJP has accused the Congress-led government of trying to silence dissent and the voice of the majority. On the other hand, Karnataka Deputy Chief Minister D.K. Shivakumar defended the move, saying that hate speech cannot be permitted and the government has to maintain peace, law and order in the state. And to unpack this further, joining us on the broadcast is Lieutenant Commander Gokul Chandran. He is a political observer who is joining us from Kanyakumari. We also have with us Tyagraj Sharma. He's a senior journalist joining us from Bengaluru. Thank you so much, both of you, for making time for us. Mr. Chandran, let me come to you first. In your opinion, does Karnataka's bill legitimately fill a legislative gap in addressing hate speech and hate crimes, or do the existing laws already provide sufficient tools and that can in fact just muddy the water rather than clarify the legal boundaries here?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. See, with the communal tensions flaring up across India and especially in a volatile state like Karnataka, to protect social harmony and individual integrity, we need such a law so that such crimes should be punished and stopped so that it doesn't snowball into a big communal riot or communal tension in any part of the nation. Today also we have many of the provisions, but everything is in vague and everything is not structured properly. So such a law will clearly spell out what will be the punishment, what will be the things that needs to be considered so that the courts can easily take things into account and punish people accordingly. So these people who tend to, they might be saying a small sentence which could flare up into a big communal riot, or a small incident, a small drawing or a small post in social media. It might be very small, but the consequences of that post might be very bad, that it will lead to a communal riot which will lead to loss of lives and property. So once this has happened, then the government has nothing to do, cannot help itself. So to stop it, to prevent any such incidents, a law is required so that people will be very careful on what they speak, write, draw or post.
Right, Mr. Chandran, we hear you now. Mr. Sharma, do you agree with that assessment? Do you think we need a specific hate speech law when existing laws already address incitement and at least public order? Or will this fill a critical gap in your understanding?
I think I would disagree with my friend here, because we already have the BNS, etc., under which hate speech, etc., are covered. Yes, I do agree with him that there have been gaps in the implementation and etc., but facts still remain no matter which law you bring out. As it is, because we already have a central law, I'm wondering whether we needed another law by the states, etc. Today it's Karnataka, tomorrow you will find other states also following suit. The point remains, ultimately, there needs to be clarity in the law that is introduced, because it can become subjective. We have had cases in terms of Shreya Singhal, etc., etc. The laws were totally misinterpreted, misconstrued, etc. Supreme Court had to intervene, etc. And even calling the IT Act under which Shreya Singhal was, troubled by the Maharashtra government in 2015. That became a problem, etc. Subsequently, the point still remains, whichever law you actually enact, unless there is clarity, there has to be clear definition of each and everything, etc. Because hate speech can be subjective. I might say something which, in my view, may not be hate speech. I'm only making a comment, etc. But it could be misconstrued by another person. So where do you draw the line? So I personally feel that instead of each state going about with their own laws, etc., they should be at the central level. Central needs to be a little more decisive in clarifying what exactly. In fact, Supreme Court has also asked state governments, also even the center also, to be more specific in terms of what exactly they should do, how to control the uh, after effects of hate speeches, etc. So therefore, I feel we need to mellow down on this a little bit, because every state cannot be having its own law on this, because we probably would be ideal for the central government to clarify its rules, laws there, even expand the BNS, in fact, make more clarification there and make it precise so that there's no confusion and one law applies everywhere across the country.
Absolutely, sir. You've rightly pointed out that clarity is paramount. We cannot afford to leave room for vagueness to be weaponized. Now, having said that, Mr. Chandran, does the bill strike the right balance, in your view, between discouraging harmful hate speech and also safeguarding free speech, or could the bill be weaponized to silence critics and curb free expression, and especially when it comes to political dissent?
In earlier cases, the law enforcement agencies couldn't punish the people or bring people, get justice to people, is because the legal framework was very weak and there were many gaps in the legal framework. Today, with this law, we have a watertight law which can punish people, which can. Am I audible?
Sorry. Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yeah. So the legal framework has to be very tight. It has to be watertight so that no person escapes in the name with the loopholes within the law. Today, what's happening? We have seen many cases. People come out and they make statements. They make very provocative statements. Yet they get away because they find some loopholes within the law, and they cannot be punished. The courts cannot punish them. So Karnataka has set an example. As Sir told, the entire India needs to have a same uniform law, but Karnataka has now set an example, because Karnataka is such a state that the places like Udupi, Shivamogga, Dakshin Karnataka, all these places are very volatile, and any small incident can flare up across the state. And Karnataka, it is one of the topmost developed, topmost revenue-earning state of India, and if anything goes wrong, the entire state comes to a standstill, and it brings bad reputation for the state which brings in a lot of FDI, and where a lot of people from other states and other countries are working. The state government cannot afford to let away any such incident. If you take the other states, like, I'm not comparing states, but the northern state like Madhya Pradesh or Bihar or any such state, a small incident might not be so much volatile. But Karnataka is not like that. We have previous history where things have gone very wrong over very small statements. I don't know why BJP is afraid of this law, because freedom of speech is different than freedom of misuse of any law. Here, BJP knows it has freedom of speech, but BJP
we hear you, sir. Mr. Chandran, right. And speaking of loopholes, critics have warned that the vague language about the intent and the burden which is placed on police or the officials could in fact lead to misuse or wrongful arrest and even selective enforcement. So there's also concern that the broad liability, including holding organizations and office bearers responsible, could have a chilling effect and even lead to fear-driven self-censorship. Now, Mr. Sharma, would you agree with that assessment?
You see, the point still remains, we are talking about freedom of speech and expression, Article 91, right? Now, we do have reasonable restrictions as Article 19(2), right? Now, admittedly, the reasonable restrictions do allow for certain provisions where we have to act accordingly in the sense that freedom of speech and speech and expression is not absolute, that we understand. But the fact remains that we are looking at a system where the bill can be misused because, after all, it is the ruling party which will be applying the rules. So these rules can be misused, etc., and can be selectively enacted. Therefore, the fear always is, because any governments which come out with such rules, there is always the fear that they are going to be selective and abuse the law that they have enacted, etc. That is one of my major fears in terms of this law. I'm not bothered about which party says what, because that is a different matter. But the fact still remains that we need more clarity in terms of each definition. What is hate speech? What sort of harm you're talking about? What sort of disorder you're talking about? So therefore, these are things which need clarity, etc. Unless there is a clarity, the vagueness will prevail, and you will continue to harbor criticism. The government particularly will not be immune to criticism for any action that it takes, etc. Because don't forget that we have had this is a very sensitive state. We have had problems in Bangalore, a couple of other places. And more importantly, government has also enacted, there's a special force to look after, prevent these things, etc. Therefore, I have my reservations when states introduce such laws on their own.
Right, Mr. Sharma, and having said that, do you think that the bill's penalties and the enforcement provisions are proportionate and also precise enough to avoid misuse? Mr. Chandran, I would like to get your opinion on this first.
See, what I need to add to what the senior journalist has said, see, the court is going to decide. It is not the government, let it be the BJP government or the Congress government which is ruling the state. It is not the state which is going to decide which is wrong or which is right. It is the court which is going to decide which is wrong or which is right. In other words, it can be taken incident by incident by using a reverse engineering. If a particular communal rights happen or some such incident happen in part of the state, what led to that? If whatever it is, if a particular speech, even if it is acceptable or not acceptable by law, if that has led to this communal tension, then obviously that person who has made that speech, it might be a simple word of donkey, monkey, dog, or whatever is a simple thing. If that has led to a communal tension, then the court can always come back and quote that speech. And because of this speech, not about the words used or the how much vehemently they used it, but even if a simple speech has led to a communal tension, then the court can obviously come back and find the person who has made that speech and they can punish them. That should be how the law works. Otherwise, people will always find loophole. No, I just said it's a dog. I said it is a monkey. Yeah, dogs and monkeys are always on the street. They are our pets. They are our gods. How can someone object to that? But if that leads to a communal tension, then obviously the court can punish this person. And that is such kind of law is what is needed in nation today.
Right, of course, sir, we hear you, but we know that the real challenge will lie in implementation. But for now, thank you so much, Mr. Chandran and Mr. Sharma, for joining us on the broadcast and sharing your valuable perspective with us.